Chapter 5. My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou should ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh to the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed, and say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breasts satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. Here in chapter 5, starting in verse 3, it uses the figure of a strange woman. And we talked about strange woman and meaning things like idol worship, a prostitute, a woman who is out after a man, using men, whatever, as a figure of speech. And here they're using her in all of those contexts, all at the same time, and saying one thing but meaning more than just that one thing. It says, for the lips of a woman, what it means is the words that she will say to you drop as an honeycomb. In other words, they are sweetness, they are delight. Honeycomb was one of the sweetest things that they knew of. There was no such thing as sugar then. There was no such thing as chocolate bars. There was no such thing as pop, whatever. It was honeycomb was the sweetest thing that they could get, and people would try to get a little piece of that every once in a while. It was delightful. Her mouth is smoother than oil, meaning that she can say words that will have you doing whatever she wants you to do. But her end, in other words, dealing with her, is bitter as wormwood. Wormwood is a type of herb almost, a type of cure that is extremely bitter. And sharp as a two-edged sword, able to cut you in half. Just so easy, it's hard for you to believe. Her feet go down to death. In other words, this woman will drag you down to hell. Now, lest, in verse 6, lest thou shouldst ponder the path of life. In other words, in case it ever occurs to you to try and figure out what to do here, you need to understand, in verse it says, her ways are movable. She and you do not have the same path, don't have the same goals. You can never know what's on her mind or in her heart. You can't. Okay? That's basically what this is telling you. Stay away from this. Remove thy way far from her. Come not nigh to the door of her house. In other words, don't go visiting prostitutes or harlots. Lest you give thine honor unto others, unto other women, and thy years be cruel. You break up your own house, you destroy your own happiness. Okay, you give your wealth to strangers. And at the last, verse 11, when thy flesh and body are consumed, thou mourn and say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof? I did not listen. You learn by sad experience. have not obeyed the voice of my teachers. Okay. It says, drink waters out of your own cistern. That means make love to your own wife. That's real. Let not your love be dispersed abroad. Don't go running after every woman that you see. Okay. It said, verse 18, let thy fountain be blessed. Let your life force be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. She made commitments to you. You make commitments to her. You keep them. In their culture, it was acceptable for a man to visit a harlot. If a woman did that, she could be stoned to death. If a man did that, he could be, but it was much more likely that she would be. It says in verse 19, let the wife of your youth be as the loving hind, which basically the loving deer. Okay, pleasant roe, same thing. Let her breast satisfy thee. Be pleased that she has made a gift of herself to you at all times. She has given you the very best she is, the very best she has, the very best she can be at all times. Be thou ravished always with her love. Understand that it is a choice you make to be ravished with her love. If she's giving you love, be ravished with it. Why? In verse 20, why wilt thou be ravished of a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord. God knows all this stuff. He sees it all. You may hide it, but He sees it. And He pondereth. Okay? Wise man pondereth all he does. He thinks about it first. Verse 22, his own iniquities, the iniquities of every man, shall take the wicked himself, and the man himself will be holding on to his life with the cords of his own sin. And in verse 23, the greatness, and this is almost like sarcasm, the greatness of his folly. In the greatness of his folly, do you think you're really smart, but you're as dumb as a rock? You shall go astray because you were not wise, because you would not follow instruction, because you went whoring after strange women.